The coverage began building in early June and hasn't slowed down since, with tens of thousands of immigrant children overwhelming detention facilities along the border. The networks and the major newspapers have jumped all over this story.
We turn now to the crisis at the border and the wave of undocumented migrants, many of them unaccompanied children, making the dangerous journey from Central America, most arriving in Texas.
And this saga hasn't just been talked about in air-conditioned studios. Network and newspaper reporters have gone to border towns, some of them traveling to Central America.
Border control along the river is practically non-existent. We've been able to cross twice, no questions asked on either side.
To understand why young people from Central America are leaving without their parents to go to the U.S., you only have to come here. San Pedro Sula, Honduras, one of the most dangerous cities in one of the most dangerous countries in the world.
But only in recent days has the mainstream coverage focused on whether the Obama administration is to blame for this mushrooming crisis.
If the president is not going to move the National Guard down there, which would stop people from physically crossing the border, the rest is smoke and mirrors.
And even many liberal commentators turning more critical of the president.
The president visits crises all over this country. Why is he not going to the border to look at this one?
The president is very, very focused on this urgent humanitarian situation.
After drawing flack for failing to visit the border during that swing through Texas, Obama told reporters he doesn't care about the optics.
I'm not interested in photo ops. I'm interested in solving a problem.
Joining us now to analyze the coverage, Lauren Ashburn, Fox News contributor who hosts Social Buzz on the Fox website. Jonah Goldberg, editor-at-large of National Review and a Fox News contributor. And Noam Scheiber, senior editor at The New Republic. Why is the mainstream press in this border crisis now, maybe some would say belatedly, turning more critical of President Obama?
I think we can just simply call it scandal fatigue. We'll go back to Obamacare rollout. You have the VA, you have the IRS, you have Bo Bergdahl. I think we're tired of policies that we're not sure are working. But as a mom, I also have to say that it is impossible as a reporter not to see these children and feel sorry for them. And it's impossible as a mother not to see and think about the children who live in the inner cities in Chicago, legal immigrants, and how all of this is going to impact them.
The pictures are heartrending, Jonah Goldberg, but when you look at the pundits, even on Fox, you have Joe Trippi and James Carville saying Obama should have gone to the border. Is there something about this border crisis that has even former presidential cheerleaders jumping ship?
I think so. I mean, look, you ask why people are covering it. It's a pretty significant real news story that's happening in real time with great pictures and all. Great pictures, not in the in the journalistic.
Not happy to see the pictures,
right? Exactly, and so. And Obama just simply seems to have lost a step on this one. And I don't think anybody believes that he's, the guy who campaigned at the Brandenburg Gate doesn't care about photo ops. I mean, all politicians care about photo ops. This one in particular does. And so there was a certain sort of just why is he being stubborn about this? And there was an interesting conversation on Morning Joe on another network I watched for reasons having to do with Original Sin they were pressing Chuck Todd. Why is he being so stubborn? Why won't he go to the border? Why won't he do this photo op thing? And I think a lot of it was just professional frustration that the White House had sort of bunkered in and dug in and refused to do what was the obviously right, moral, and political thing. At
the same time, Noam Scheiber, are some of the media unfairly blaming President Obama, who's now asked Congress for nearly $4 billion in funding and is getting pushback from the Republicans?
Look, as a practical matter, there's only so much utility that a presidential visit accomplishes, right? You can argue that it actually sets back the situation because it creates a whole circus unto itself that doesn't advance the cause of solving this problem.
So you're sort of in the minority here, even on the liberal side. You think the president had no particular reason to go and pose for the cameras?
I think so. I think we're missing something on the liberal side that's important here, and that's the broader context for this immigration debate on the left. And that is, people on the left feel like the president did something that they didn't agree with, which was really double down on this deportation phenomenon. He went out and he tried to claim the mantle of deporter-in-chief. The whole reason he did this was to advance the cause of immigration reform. He thought he would be able to get a bipartisan bill if he did that, if he established some credibility. That's not happening, and now liberals are saying, look, why did you lurch to the right on this? You just made the problem worse, and now we're not even getting this bipartisan compromise that we were promised.
Let's pull back for a second and look at the substance of the media coverage over the last few weeks. So put the president aside. How would you evaluate it?
It has been covered on in newspapers, online, on the airwaves. The coverage has been excellent, especially by the networks who have sent people down there. As we heard, Stephanie Gosk has been in there, and she
has been in Central America.
Yes, in Honduras and Guatemala. And she actually watched one of these coyotes getting the money and doing the trade right in front of police officers. So the coverage on the conservative side has been focusing much more recently, as we pointed out, on blaming Obama and blaming the policies. And even the liberals now are coming to that.
This is not a story, Jonah, where we can say the mainstream media were asleep at the switch. I mean, this has been on the network newscast night after night since early June, as I said.
Yeah, well, they were asleep at the switch for several years as the number of kids showing up at the border grew with geometric progression since, 2012. And in large part, I would argue, and lots of people would argue, as a result of a lot of Barack Obama's policies. I would disagree with Noam. Obama has claimed the title of deporter-in-chief, but he has not, in fact, been deporter-in-chief. What they do is they change the way the statistics are collected about people that catch at the border and turn around. They now count them as deportations, where they didn't do that in the past. The LA Times, which has done some great coverage of this, points out that if you actually accounted for deportations the old way, Barack Obama has deported fewer illegal immigrants than anybody else, and his administration has made it very clear that illegal immigrants who are not committing felonies and not breaking the law, who are already living here, simply will not be deported. And that is one of the reasons why we're having this crisis at the border that now they're noticing, but they only did so very recently.
But I think that the people are actually covering both sides of the issue, and conservatives to their side and liberals to their side. But there is also that middle ground where we are seeing both issues covered.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's being covered. But, look, on today's show, Savannah Guthrie asked, asked Chuck Todd, Chuck can send me a check later, is there any chance that we'll get comprehensive immigration reform passed which would stop this crisis? That is just simply factually wrong. And it is a big part of a lot of the coverage you see in the network news, where as if there is a connection between this border crisis, what's happening with these kids, and comprehensive immigration reform. And conservatives get this wrong, too. They talk about how we need more, you heard O'Reilly talk about how if we just had more border guards and more troops down there. These kids are turning themselves into the troops. That's like having more customer service reps at the border. It's completely unrelated things in that sense.
I was just trying to make the point that while people like to denigrate the mainstream media, which have a lot of flaws, these are the organizations that can put journalistic boots on the ground in places like border towns in Central America. But Noam, let me have you respond to Jonah. Is there an agenda baked into the way this is being covered? Certainly when reporters go interview these children or their families, it's heartrending, but I don't know that it's being done for political purposes.
No, not at all. In fact, I think Jonah's right that if you account for the deportations the way we traditionally have, Obama's not in the top five. Not a high, not an overachiever. But I think what happened was the administration itself spun out this narrative that he was a very aggressive deporter. The media and the left jumped on that, and so the meme kind of multiplied across the media landscape. Now the administration isn't so comfortable with that, and they're trying to walk that back, at least to people on the left who are very frustrated with this. But once it's taken within the media, once it's taken on the left, very hard to walk it back. And so I think the administration is sort of caught between its previous narrative and its current narrative, and is flailing a bit as a result.
ABC cited sources in the administration who say that deportations are going to go down dramatically.
But let's look at the whole last year. The mainstream press, and with the border crisis as kind of a tipping point, now, in your view, turning against the president.
Yeah. The media are lemmings. We all know that, right? It used to be cool to like President Obama, and now it's uncool to like President Obama. And
this is like high school?
Yeah, well, this is just the way the media operates. Their trends go in coverage, and that's what's happening now. It's taken crisis after crisis to get there, but we're now moving in that direction.
I've been saying for months since the botched Obamacare rollout that the coverage has turned much more negative against President Obama than it certainly had been in the first term, either of his elections, and then you had the VA scandal, and you had Bo Bergdahl, and you had the IRS, and the mess in Iraq. Would you disagree with my assessment?
No, I think that's right. And that happens to all presidents, right? Mm-hmm. In the 6th year, people are just tired. They want a new figure. They start talking about the next campaign and all the rest. I am surprised, just to keep it on the border thing for 1 second, I am shocked that the press isn't protesting more the rules at these detention centers.
Right, very restrictive access.
I mean, everyone wants to compare this to Katrina, which I think is a ridiculous comparison on lots of levels. But imagine if somehow the Bush administration announced you can't talk to anybody in the humanitarian centers about their experience. People would have gone batty, and they're not doing that on this.
My impression, Noam, is that liberal pundits are anywhere from disillusioned to depressed over Barack Obama, and they'd rather talk about Hillary at this point.
Yeah, no, I think there's a fair amount of disillusionment. I think the Hillary thing is an enormous challenge for the administration. I mean, she is a candidate who's just going to have unprecedented attention, unprecedented stature. You never see this as the person who's likely to replace the incumbent president, basically already can kind of carry herself as a quasi-president herself.
Even 2.5 years before the election.
2.5 years out. I think it's going to be a huge problem for the administration. I think in the not too near future, you're going to get Democrats on Capitol Hill calling Hillary and saying, hey, how do you think we should play this? What do you think the right move here is? Rather than the White House, or at least that will be her first call, it's going to be an enormous headache. And obviously the press coverage is going to migrate to her when they see this happening.
Let's save that topic for next week.